Okay, and over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm Katrina Stevens. I'm the Senior Advisor in the Office of Ed Tech, which is in the U.S. Department of Education. And essentially, we're hoping to just share some strategies and approaches and some examples from other places around the country about how people have been creative and used the resources that they have or been able to leverage existing resources that are out there or finding new resources. I'm going to basically share a presentation with you right now, so I'm pulling that up so you can see it. While that's going, just letting you know that there is a Q&A. For this, if you have questions throughout the presentation, we'll make sure that we have some time at the end or even during to be able to respond to those. And there we go.
Okay, and once you click the present mode or start slideshow, we can definitely see those.
So what do I need to do? Oh, mine actually has you already doing that, so let me see. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, I do see it.
Okay. Oh, but you can see it in presenter mode?
I can, yeah.
Okay, good. Right. Then I will. So for those of you who are out there, essentially really a lot of the conversation we're having is really about the future-ready schools. And if you were chimed in this morning, you were able to see kind of the background history of how this is connected to Connect Ed and how this is really about thinking through the Future Ready Pledge and how we really do get our schools ready. The pledge has a number of different components to it. And each of them really are sort of dealing with culture, dealing with the high-speed internet activity, professional learning. But the one thing in terms of all of these is that they take resources in order to be able to be successfully implemented. So today is really about thinking through how can you use those resources that exist. Because if you don't, then it makes it difficult actually to do each of these pieces. So really today it's just about, we're going to walk through some questions to kind of think through and share some examples of how other people are solving some of these. The first thing really is that you really have to kind of think about your whole structure and not just simply your budget. So before we delve into any specifics about details, about funding, it's really important that you need to look at everything collectively. You need to not just look at your budget and not just the technology and the curriculum budget lines. It's really time to rethink about everything about what you do. The reality is that the pie is not growing larger. It's not like suddenly you're going to get twice the budget you used to have, but more of the pie existing pie that you have is going to go towards education technology as we keep moving forward. And though there are some funds available to support initiatives, overall your budget is not likely to expand significantly. We're still having, the economy is not suddenly going to be able to provide each of the districts with huge amounts of funding that are going to change everything how you do. So you really have to think about holistically looking at all of the pieces of your school budget, and that includes everything from building to staff to other resources that you use. So the first thing you really want to ask yourself is, what does using technology allow you to stop doing? Too often we add initiatives without letting our schools and teachers know what they can stop doing. And technology can also add some efficiency into the overall system that can save time and money in other ways if you're making good choices about the kinds of technology you're incorporating. And I'll just share a few examples that we've heard about from other schools. So one, there's a principal in rural Illinois who shared that after she purchased personal devices for all of her students, when the teachers returned from their summer break, she said, "Oh, I have something to tell you. Over the break, someone came through and cut all of the cables to all the printers in the building. We've sent out and we've ordered cords, but in the meantime, if you really want to print something, the printer in my office is the one printer that's still working, and I'm happy to have you come in and use it. But you do actually have these personal devices that you can use. Each of your students have them." And at the next break, she said, "Oh, they ordered the wrong printer cords." And again, she offered her office printer if anyone really needed to print. At the end of the year, of course, she told the teachers the truth, that all of her, that in fact, they hadn't lost all of their the cords, but in fact, she really wanted them to start using the technology they had. And she was literally able to take the budget that she had allocated for printing costs, paper costs, printer cartridges, and was able to save enough money that actually paid for the devices. So some things to think about is looking at, how much are you paying for some things that you could stop using. Another thing to think about is that there are more and more open educational resources out there. So curriculum budgets and curricular materials is another place that you can look. There are consortiums in states, for instance, Utah has a set of resources, and there's some other states that do as well, that any state can use, that teachers in that state or district have pulled together. So sometimes people are literally cutting, not having to buy the textbooks. I have gone into numerous districts and seen literally warehouses full of curricular materials. So it's worthwhile to take a look and see what already exists in your spaces. As districts have moved towards having fewer curriculum supplies and books, they've also been able to save money on warehouse space. Storage is something that can be really expensive in some areas. So it's another place to look and to think about doing. Electricity is another thing that a number of schools have told us that they have even involved kids in figuring out ways that they could make better use of energy resources, and having campaigns for being able to turn the lights off when you're leaving, rethinking about which buildings are in use and when they need to get heated and cooled and when they need to be lit. There have even been a few schools that have invested in solar power and added those to their buildings, and have been able to, over a few years, been able to recoup that cost, and even a few of them have been able to sell some of the energy back into the to the community grid. So again, people are being creative and looking at where in their budget are these places where they're spending money that maybe they don't need to be spending that money. Another thing to think through is with whom can you partner? We cannot do this work alone. We need to be able to work with other schools, other districts, other states, with community organizations, with other corporations, people who create edtech technology. This is, if we really want to change how and what the work that schools do, then we really need to involve the whole community to do this work.
Katrina, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? I think that we're missing your slide transitioning. So if you can stop sharing your screen for just a moment, and then go ahead and open your PowerPoint and put it into that presenter view mode so that it fills your whole screen. And then try to go back and share your entire desktop and see if that works, because we're missing the slide transitions.
So you're just not seeing the move, and it's stuck on the.
Yeah, so it's just stuck on one slide.
Okay. Let me do. Slide. Yeah, I can do both of them at once. So let me just share. So maybe if I did, just trying to think of another way to do this. I do this. Let's try this and see if this works. How's that?
And then go ahead and open up your presentation one more time, or the presentation window.
It is actually
the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm in presenter view, so it sounds like you're not able to see it.
No, I'm only able to see your browser. It looks like it's just shared Chrome.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be. All right, let me go back out.
Yeah.
Let's. I'm just using a simple PowerPoint, so I'm not sure why that wouldn't work.
And Katrina, this is Steve. Sorry. Hey, so when you click play slideshow, then you go, you tab back to the Hangout window and you go to screen share. You just have to make sure that you're either sharing the presenting version of the slides or you're sharing your whole screen, so that when you go to look at your slides again, we see that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see both at the same time, so I can't see the Google Hangout and see in presenter.
Yeah, so
let's see. It's okay this
so
morning.
if you for some reason, what happens is on Macs, it seems to not allow you to move forward in this view. So even though we see a slide, but you can't move forward. So go ahead and
I wonder if that's going to be the only way to do this. Are you able to at least...
Well, unfortunately, I think so. Go forward from that slide. Go to the next slide and tell us when you've done so. Because I think what we'll find is that we don't actually see the next slide. It stays on this one. Oh no, it's working.
Okay. So it just looks like I can't be in presenter view, and I have to stay in this.
Yeah, we've been having trouble with Macs all day on this. So yeah, I would say just go ahead from here this way. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. I want to make sure people are seeing seeing what I'm sharing. So essentially what I was talking about is like, who can you partner with, and to be creative about that work. So for instance, Maine was able to get an extraordinary low rate on devices and on their high-speed access because they purchased as a state. So they were essentially able to pull together and work as one purchasing entity. North Carolina similarly had a consortium that was able to use that kind of buying purchasing power. And it's not just about the bulk purchasing that you can do by joining with other districts. It also gives you access to high quality expertise, because you can build that into contracts if you've got a larger group. And also to think about ways to share other kinds of resources. Like for example, can you partner with another school or district to bring in a PD provider, so that you want to have to work on something particular with personalized learning? Is there a way to be able to share the costs by combining schools or combining districts to bring someone in? Or even better yet, are there experts in each of your schools and districts that could offer the PD without having to pay the high costs of external PD providers? Are there districts then that might have expertise across another part of the state that they could kind of come share? And the advantage of that is that you are more likely actually to get an expert who is more closely aligned to what your district and your school looks like. And we often forget that we have a lot of internal expertise. Then are there also districts that you can collaborate to design curriculum? There's been a lot of changes in curriculum nationwide recently. And it takes a lot of human resources to redesign curriculum. And if you can think about, for instance, bringing in several schools or several districts together to really design the perfect 6th grade curriculum, and being able, instead of having people across the state all designing a 6th grade curriculum, thinking about, is there ways to combine that effort and actually even potentially get a better or stronger product? There are other ways that there's that kind of time and resources and expertise that you can share. And other ways to kind of partner is to think about partnering with local organizations. Forsyth, Georgia is another great example of partnering with a local community. They wanted to provide more safe access to students outside of school time. So they had solved a lot of the problems in terms of being able to provide access during the school day, but they were really struggling with a lot of their students not really having access at home. So what they did is they reached out to the community and the businesses and libraries and other community organizations and basically said, hey, we'd really like to partner with you. Are you able to provide high-speed internet, and we'll connect you to our internet so that when the kids are accessing it, they'll have the same basically securities that are put in place on that. And the community stepped up. The school created these stickers that you can see here, the free Wi-Fi zone stickers. They were put in any business who participated. And what the additional impact of not just having spaces where kids could go after school or the weekends, but it also created a community that really understood what the school was trying to do in terms of moving towards digital learning. The companies and other organizations were able to really connect with individual students in a way that when the school went to start asking for instance, when it came time for budget or for other kinds of projects that they were doing, the community really already understood the importance of the work that they were doing. And so that allowed them to make those asks were a lot easier after this had been put in place. For the businesses and the organizations, it's a nice marketing thing for them. One, they often just like to be able to support the schools, but the district had put together a map with all the locations of all of the businesses and organizations and posted it on their site. So it was actually good for the community as well. Making sure I can move to the next one. Okay. And then the next question, how can you leverage government funding differently? So most people know about the different kinds of funding that's available from the government, but often it's not often clear in terms of how you can use that and what you can use it for, and particularly for each kind of funding. So the one I want to talk about, just because this is really one of the biggest changes that's happened in the last couple of decades, is all the recent modernization that's happened for E-rate. We literally had added another $5 billion to be able to get schools not just getting Wi-Fi to the building, but there's also funds to get Wi-Fi within and devices and infrastructure in place within a building to get all the schools together. And I can't stress this enough, because many times people have applied for funding in the past and there was limited funding, so they weren't successful and people had stopped really applying because they didn't quite meet some of the metrics in terms of particularly high poverty. However, I strongly recommend this year that you still go forward and that you apply. There's enough funds in there that we're expecting everyone who applies to be able to get those funds. There's enough funding that we can get 99% of all of our schools in the next 2 years set up with high-speed internet access, which is amazing, because once that infrastructure is in place, you can imagine the rest of the kinds of work that we can do and how that will change how teaching and learning happens. The other thing that happens a lot as we go around the country is that districts will tell us, oh, we can't use federal funds for that, or they tell me that I can't use federal funds to use this way. And so our office created a document we call the Dear Colleague letter, but essentially it's at tech.ed.gov/funding. And it walks through and gives some really specific examples of ways that you can use existing federal funding to support digital learning. And I'll give you just a few examples. For instance, for professional development, you can use Title IIA to support teachers using digital learning tools. You can use it to hire coaches or personalize professional learning. You can also use that same Title IIA to provide online professional development. It can be blended programs, webinars, online conferences, online communities of practice. You can also use that funding to implement systems to collect, manage, and analyze data. There, in terms of the bucket around student materials, resources, and support, you can use that to access CCRS digital resources. You can use Title IIA to find and adopt OER. So you can use that to really locate open education resources. Title III, you can use that to purchase software for English language learners. You can use IDA Part D with state professional development grants. You can use that actually to really support educator communication and collaboration. So there's a number of ways that you can use some of these funds to support digital learning initiatives. We've found that when district leaders have taken, or school leaders have taken this letter to whoever in their organization basically manages the legal aspects of the school or the accounting, that this letter has been really invaluable to them for being able to reassure and to give confidence that they in fact can use that funding in this way. Now you still have to be careful of some of the like you can't supplant versus supplementing. So some of those regulations are still in place, but there's a lot more flexibility than people realize that there is flexibility. And then what else? What are some other ways that you can do funding more creatively? I'm just kind of share some of the things that we've been hearing again from across the country. Grant writing, for instance, is one way that you can do it. Now, the caveat with grant writing is that you want to make sure that anything you do is still long-term, will be sustainable. But there's a district in Marietta, Georgia, for instance, that has parents come in twice a month, and they gather and they either do one of two things. Sometimes the teachers will have said, like, here's some of the projects we're looking to do. Can you find potential grant opportunities that we could apply for? And that could be anything from Donors Choose, or to some other kind of smaller thing, or to larger grants. The other time that they also use this group of parents is to actually write the grants. Sometimes districts and schools, where there may be some large federal grants or state grants that are available, and they just don't have the bandwidth to have someone sit and write those. And so again, there may be community resources that can be helpful in writing the grants for you. You can think about staffing differently. There's a school in Baltimore City called Liberty Elementary, and they have their funding is done so that it's all site-based. So they get a set budget, and that principal can use that budget however, in this case, he would like. What he's chosen to do is, instead of hiring an assistant principal, he's taken that funding and he has used that and has a distributed leadership model. So he's empowered several of his teachers to really step up, and he has additional stipends for them, but they really get to step up and take on leadership roles. The school has about 450 students, so it's not a huge school, but still, like, he's been able to manage, like most other principals would have an assistant principal. Some of the roles that an assistant principal would normally do, he has been able to, for instance, work with a national nonprofit organization that has essentially where you can have someone come to your school for 2 to 3 years for a fairly low salary. They believe they get a stipend for about $27,000. And so he's gotten a community organizer that comes in and does a lot of the, works with a lot of the partners that the school has used, and has been able to provide just a lot of the logistic support that sometimes an assistant principal would do. The thing about staffing differently, and for instance, you may look and you might have had tech positions that no longer make sense in elementary school, for instance, like or classes that were specifically in learning how to use programs, where if that work is being blended into the curriculum itself and teachers are more able to do that, some of those positions that have been around for years may not be necessary. Now, of course, anytime that you are talking about changing how staffing works, you need to think through morale and thinking through that these are real people with real jobs, and how can you help them transition to another role that might work better for them. But staffing is one of the biggest costs in a district, so thinking creatively about what those roles look like is an important component of really analyzing, looking at your budget. You can also do some creative kinds of things. If you have a sense of adventure, there is a principal, the Ann McCure principal, Greg Mackey, and the AP Bonnie Morton did a fundraiser where students paid $1 to add a piece of duct tape. They, as you can see, so I had to say, had some fun with this. The kids had some fun with this. The event raised about $4,000, which was towards their $37,000 goal. They wanted to buy one-to-one devices. Now, that was only a part of that larger goal, but the real value was around the PR for this. The story received so much local press, which then helped them to reach out to the community for additional support. So again, if you be creative in helping share your story and the work that you're trying to do with the community, that can be a way to leverage getting additional resources. You can also do things like put on your own conference, provide professional development. EduCon is an example of a school in Philadelphia, Science Leadership Academy. They run EduCon every year. It's always sold out, and innovative educators come from all over the country to participate. The conference is run by students, parents, and teachers. The students learn real-life skills putting on the conference. In the first few years of this event, they paid for the devices and some of the other supports that they needed for their digital learning initiatives. This past year, the conference actually paid for 2 teachers to remain at the school. You may have known that the city had some significant cuts, and they were able to hold on to all of their staff because of this. So you might think about other events that you can do that tie into the work that you're doing. They could also raise money for you and bring in some fun. Wi-Fi on buses is another kind of creative solution. Several districts have been getting press lately about innovative ways to connect students during out-of-school time. Coachella, for example, recognized that they had a fleet of buses that just sat on the lot at night. They figured out how to wire the buses and then park them in neighborhoods to provide high-speed access. The Layden School District near Chicago has added Wi-Fi for long trips so that students can do work when they're traveling to away games or other kinds of trips. It's important, though, to note that these particular solutions are really patches rather than a long-term solution, because you really want to make sure that you're finding ways to get access really in the homes for students, but it really has helped them to be able to move their initiatives forward. So really, one of the things to your best source of information and ideas for how to do this work is really talking to peer districts. And they can be your best resources for finding out, are there ways that they have allocated resources more effectively? Have they thought through how much time certain things take, and they're able to take less time to do certain kinds of things? Have they thought a bit more creatively about how they're staffing? And really, that's about trying to achieve your goals. And other states and districts and schools have been doing this work. So there's a lot of people out there to be able to talk to in terms of being able to get some supports for this. There's a couple of resources that we have in our office. One is we have an infrastructure guide. This was designed in conversations with many districts and schools across the United States. There are real-world examples in here, and it really walks you step by step through building the infrastructure efficiently. You know, everything from thinking about what kinds of infrastructure you need, what kind of professional development do you need, what kinds of, how do you get access at home? It's all of the different decision making that goes into this, and it shares different examples of how other people have solved this. And it can save some time for you. COSIN has a resource as well that helps you think through what is the real long-term costs of different kinds of infrastructure or other kinds of resources that you might purchase. That's at cosin.org, Smart IT. I wanted to make sure that you had my contact information, and you're welcome to reach out to me or anyone in my office if you have questions about anything that I've shared, or if you have other suggestions. And I also love to hear stories. So if you've done something creatively in your school or district, we love to hear those examples, because then we can share them out with other people. Does anyone have any questions? Did any questions come through in the Q&A?
It doesn't look like there are any questions in the Q&A, but there may be some people that follow up with you later, and definitely from watching the recording.
Great.
Cool. Thank you so much, Katrina.
Thank you for giving me the time.
All right.